Since issuing my first vlog on AI, I detect a growing disillusionment with AI itself. I will discuss this in depth later, but I would argue that AI is not living up to its hype. We're increasingly disenchanted as we uncover the sleight of hand that has occurred. This, in fact, is the disenchantment Max Weber identified arising from technology. Or he used the word science, rather than the stock bubble predicted by the financial press. Indeed, this in itself seems to be driving tech companies to label regular software as AI, and hence some of the disenchantment. In my vlogs, Artificial Intelligence and Massive Deceit, and Artificial Intelligence or Narcissist Manipulation, I argue that the large-scale language models that are being promoted as AI have really been trained to pass the Turing Test, or at least convince us they have. That is the goal, to convince humans that they are indeed human, but that this does not necessarily include being truthful and honest. The Mechanical Turk, also known as the Automaton Chess Player, was a chess-playing machine constructed in 1770, which played a game of chess against a human opponent. The Turk was in fact a mechanical illusion that allowed a human chess master hiding inside to operate the machine. There are numerous examples of similar subterfuge being used by AI companies. For example, xAI's Amy personal assistant and meeting scheduler was found to be actually using low-paid ghost workers to read and rewrite emails, etc. OpenAI used outsourced Kenyan workers, earning less than $2 per hour, to label harmful content. These labels were used to train a model to detect such content in the future. The outsourced workers were exposed to toxic and traumatic content. It's recently been announced that the much heralded Amazon AI automated shops were actually using armies of people in India watching cameras in shops, with 70% of all transactions being validated in India. I might add there were no trolleys in the stores, so at least Amazon had solved the problem of trolley wheels sticking, something that has eluded capitalism for so long. As one Google employee explained, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's not actually the artificial, it's the humans that are doing the work. In fact, Google recently announced Gemini, a workplace AI tool, which was completely staged with manual feed content to the AI engine. Of course, the Mechanical Turk machines were developed. Following the Mechanical Turk, machines were developed which supported the Industrial Revolution. AI may well move from the current subterfuge to support a new Industrial Revolution. And certainly within academia, AI is making impressive strides forward. But I have other concerns, especially related to how the term AI is used and promoted by tech companies, that I'll discuss further later. The large language models require vast amounts of training data. This originally gave Chinese developers a huge advantage over the West, but then data from social media was used to train Western models, after which Western developers used web scraping bots to collect data, something my own companies pioneered in the research industry. But these included seemingly much that was plagiarised, and there are now many lawsuits related to this, including copy leaks found 59.7% of ChatGPT 3.1's output contains some form of plagiarism. In July 2023, the FTC launched an investigation into OpenAI and the creator of ChatGPT over allegations that the company scraped public data and published false and defamatory information. The FTC sent OpenAI a 20-page letter asking for comprehensive information about its technology and privacy safeguards, as well as steps taken to prevent the reoccurrence of situations in which its chatbot generated false and derogatory content about people. In the UK, the NHS has given Google's DeepMind supposedly confidential 1,600,000 patient records to train its AI. Now, having developed software for use by the NHS, I find this incredible, as their procedures used to be the strictest I have ever come across. So strict that it meant that many small software programs simply couldn't be economically deployed. Some estimates that soon 90% of the internet could be AI generated. My vlog CERN and Parallel Universes appear to point to this on science vlogs on this very platform. This is so important as it takes away the incentive for the creation of original content, which is behind the current dispute between Hollywood actors and the large media companies. The primary issue causing the dispute between studios and artists are intellectual property rights, artistic integrity, the lack of residuals from streaming services, and new developments within artificial intelligence and synthetic media technology. Thus, I don't think it's putting it too strongly that AI could destroy entire industries engaged in the creation of content and indeed human knowledge. In my vlog, Artificial Intelligence or Narcissistic Manipulation, I express that large-scale language models appear to have learned narcissistic behaviour from having been trained on human responses. This includes fabricating information, overconfidence in reporting this information, and downright abuse. This behaviour is common for large-scale language models and is called hallucinations. OpenAI acknowledges that ChatGPT sometimes writes plausible-sounding but incorrect and nonsensical answers, to such a degree that Chinese state media have characterised ChatGPT as a way for the US to spread false information. My observation is far from off the wall, and Microsoft had to shut a AI chatbox down because the bot started spewing out a series of lewd and racist tweets, such as "Hitler was right, I hate the," and it begins with a J. Well, it's a race beginning, a religion beginning with a J and ending with an S. Worse still, my vlog Narcissism, Artificial Intelligence and Fundamentalism, I report my long-held suspicion that some of the most hard-line Islamic posts are actually created by bots. Since making that vlog, I have found that my suspicions were indeed correct, and that both humans and bots from the BJP IT cell in India pose as hardline Muslims. Whilst highly dangerous, maybe such activity is just about legal in India. But when used on channels not originating in India and having large numbers of not having large numbers of Indian viewers, it's both highly dangerous and, I suspect, illegal. Most countries have very strict laws on encouraging and supporting, and I don't think I can say this word either, it begins with an A and ends with an ism. Yet this is exactly what appears to be going on here. November 2023, Randall Curran Reed, a young African-American man, was pulled over by state police in Atlanta. He was arrested for 2 cases of theft in New Orleans, but Reed had never been to Louisiana. His protestation came to nothing, and he was jailed for 6 days as his family spent thousands of dollars hiring lawyers in both Georgia and Louisiana. It emerged that the arrest warrants had been based solely on facial recognition match, though that was never mentioned in any police document. The warrants claimed a credible source had identified Reed as the culprit. The facial recognition match was incorrect, and the case eventually fell apart and Reed was released. This illustrates how we putting faith in fallible systems and often have no recourse to argue against it, particularly when dealing with companies and government. Deep learning systems are at their most deterministic when they're applied to ascribe identity or other social characteristics from a set of inputs understood as signals. That includes predicting, I don't think I can say it, sexuality from a photograph of a face, whether a person will commit a crime after being released on bail, and whether a person is a credit risk. As I suspect, and as I suspect by RBS to debank me, despite having significant funds in my account, or whether a crime was gang-related. In artificial intelligence or narcissistic manipulation, I highlight this problem because large-scale language models are programmed to pass the Turing Test and not for accuracy, despite it being claimed, with a degree of justification, that the logic for such models is within a black box. Thus, decision-making cannot be interrogated. If we become solely reliant on the logic and efficiency of our AI, we risk neglecting the human capacity for the intangible, for creativity, for the pursuit of meaning beyond the material. Too often we talk of the problem of AI, we remove the human from the picture. We worry that AI will eliminate jobs and make millions redundant, rather than recognise that real decisions are being made by governments and corporations, and the humans that run them. We hear of Rist and Sist algorithms, yet the humans who created the algorithms and those who deploy them remain almost hidden. But such adversarial examples reveal a darker side of machines learning, enchantment, predictive powers. They cause machines to mislead in ways that are difficult for humans to identify, understand and control. In artificial intelligence or narcissistic manipulation, I suggest that AI is being employed in the wrong areas and in the wrong way. When I pioneered AI with my companies in the UK public sector, I never envisaged that it was to replace humans, but to aid them in decision making, a sophisticated expert system, if you like, that the logic would be accessible and not contained within a black box. Deep learning works to identify patterns in data with low or no human supervision than expert systems, testing these interfaces, inference against examples to validate models, often automatically. It extends machine learning techniques by layering more abstract representations of data on top of each other, from the rough to the refined, and nesting each step within a network. This layering process increases the depth of the network, or what is so often claimed to be a black box, or some might say a black art. The network's outputs can be tested in real-world contexts, usually in the form of classifications. This empirical orientation differentiates deep learning from expert systems relied on an initial a priori specification of a task. I therefore saw it as most appropriate applied to complex problems, giving human decision makers alternative information on which to take decisions. But in both business and government, it has been applied in those human intensive areas which seem to cause the most problems. Thus it has been applied to customer service, even sales, and to search engines. But these are at the very heart of business and government, the interface between organisations and its customers, providing the organisation with valuable information on its customers and its business. Indeed, AI seems to have been applied to already outsourced call centre customer service. The results so often feel like a consultant has been employed to extend the critical paths way beyond what the average customer is prepared to accept. The 10 weeks to get my passport, the year for my parents' estate to clear probate, and my current frustrations in claiming my pensions being personal examples. But I accept I must, because I have no alternative. Again, I cannot be alone in believing that everything, including consumption, is getting more difficult. At the time of writing, I've just received some asthma inhalers, which took 10 days to deliver, despite relying on them. I also cannot be alone in having given up on a number of businesses having failed to get satisfaction from their AI customer service. But I also am now consuming a lot less. However, consumption is necessary for business, governments and capitalism to survive. Yes, I do mean governments. As when the electorate cannot get satisfaction, they turn against the government itself. Maybe a few will express this in voting for populist options, but most likely will simply withdraw and be labelled apathetic, when in reality they are completely disenchanted. In short, I believe the way AI is being employed is leading to the destruction of the very organisations it's being employed in. Maybe I'm somewhat unique in using my smartphone less and less, as I become disenchanted with it. But I also know only too well that it's now impossible to go on holiday without it, despite this being one of the attractions of going on holiday. It is worth posing the question, what is a business, government or economic system for, if not to provide the mechanisms to support human life? We're told this is what capitalism does effectively. But capitalism is not an economic system. After all, wealth is created in what we are told are communist countries, although having visited China are anything but, and in social democratic countries. No, capitalism's a philosophy about the allocation of wealth and an accounting system to keep track of it. A system which ensures there is no social movement and no meritocracy, however much it attempts to convince us that there is. But as in the vlogs Artificial Intelligence and Massive Deceit and Quantum Computing, I express a belief that the very assumptions that are being built into large-scale language models replicating the inequalities which exist under capitalism, also not allowing any conception of alternative allocations of wealth, nor critique of it. I find myself increasingly at odds with those posting on this platform from North America. We use completely different language, for example, for capitalism and communism. But more importantly, we have vastly different assumptions about the world we would like to live in. Thus, with the best intentions, our future is being shaped by the assumptions of those living in the Bay Area. The emergence of artificial intelligence, if this is indeed possible, would not only change our society and the conception we have of it, but also change our conception of ourselves and therefore probably change us also. It would have to be seen as the accumulation of a process that started with the Enlightenment, as man becomes the machine itself. Most of the income for production would end up in the hands of the owners of AI. A capitalist economy may not be sustainable in these circumstances. I've also expressed that a concern that as AI replaces jobs, who will be the consumers? Unless we redistribute wealth to the and underemployed. Issues that are seemingly non-debatable at the moment. But my real concern is expressed in my vlog, Artificial Intelligence or Narcissistic Manipulation. In this I suggest that the large-scale language models, essentially word matching models, which maybe are not true AI, have developed narcissistic behaviour. But I would now like to argue that AI is at its root narcissistic. The progress of AI is somehow contributing to reinforcing the rationalisation of our society by contributing to making social relations even more impersonal. Algorithms treat personal data fully impersonally. Humans literally disappear behind the data they generate. This makes our behaviour more and more predictable, though this is not really our behaviour that is predicted. It is the behaviour of a mass of faceless people. You can rationalise the organisation of society, not the organisation of human minds. Indeed, once we realise that society is not being organised by a manipulator, wonder is replaced by disenchantment and maybe hatred. Earlier I mentioned our disenchantment with AI. Humans naturally look for patterns in language. Thus, when presented with mountains of language from AI, we believe it is a human. But maybe at the heart of this disenchantment is the realisation that when engaging with AI, we're engaging with systems with no human empathy. Disenchantment because we realise that we've been fooled. Worse still, that our conversation has been training AI to become more like us. Just as we find conversations with narcissists unsettling and eventually disengage, more and more of us are refusing to engage with AI. In a world where everything is rationalised, including our thoughts, and what is happening in our inner world, where is the retreat for our spiritual beliefs? Nevertheless, it's unlikely that within traditional religions, as researchers at Booth Business School have found that the higher the level of automation in society, the lower the incidence of religious beliefs. Once we realise this sleight of hand, and indeed disrespect shown to us by business and governments, we will not blame the AI, but business and governments themselves, not least due to the cognitive dissonance between our disenchantment and the enchantment of business and government. I don't know how many of you use Duolingo, but I've been using it for years to learn Bahasa Indonesia, not very successfully. I'm becoming very disenchanted with it. It's obvious that its AI is playing around with strategies to make me spend more and more time on it. It has not worked out, or at least not yet. When I spot I am being manipulated, I withdraw, as indeed we all should when confronted by a narcissist. But what also is apparent is like a narcissist, there is no empathy, and manipulation is seemingly more and more cruel. Of course, AI has no empathy, and these are simply strategies, and my reaction is simply useful training data. But to me, it's personal. When this trust is gone, what will we be left with? To my mind, an increasingly bitter and divided society. If I am correct, what will become of the expensive AI systems businesses and governments have invested in? Well, hopefully they'll learn from it and apply the systems appropriately in the correct business areas. But if they don't, surely this is much greater threat to humanity than AI systems taking over the world.